Well, I am just so excited. Kelly, this is so terrific for our community. And what's so wonderful is that it's only the beginning because you're going to be back with us on April 12th giving a masterclass. And where the whole school is already excited and looking forward to that. And this is wonderful to get to know you a little bit before that happens. And I'm very happy that you're with us tonight. For everyone here, Kelly is an artist, a violinist, an entrepreneur, an innovator, and it'll be so wonderful to hear how this all happened from the very beginning and where you get your terrific ideas and how you use music to help people and to make the world a better place. And that is a wonderful feeling about what the music means to us and to our entire community. So I can't wait for you to start telling us about yourself. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Dorothy, and thank you, Michael. Thanks for inviting me. It's an honor to be part of the Turn Our School family. It seems like a very special place, and I'm really happy to be welcomed into your community. So, yeah, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about my development in my career since we're talking about a school, since we're talking to students and parents of students. I just want to talk a little bit about my development and before we get to the professional career part, because I think sometimes there's a sense when you're on this side of the dais or the Zoom screen, everything's figured out and everything, there was never any difficulty or struggle, and I want to, you know, dispel some of that and just tell what it's really like, or what it was really like in my perspective, to arrive at the career that I am, and I'm still going. So I am from, and also I want to talk to you about my career through the lens of projects. I'm very project oriented. I like to create things, and I'll tell you a little bit more about how that has worked for me, mainly through the lens of recording projects, but also another very special project that I'll share with you. And if you are so inclined to join us, you can do so at a very special concert at Carnegie Hall at the end of March, March 31st. So I'll tell you all about that. So to tell you a little bit about me and how I got started, I am from Greenville, South Carolina. I started in the public school system, started playing the violin of my own volition. Here's how that happened. I think I probably sifted music out of my environment. I think every child has things that they gravitate towards, and for me, it was always music on television and church, and any environment that I heard it. And so on Saturdays, I watched Warner Brothers cartoons, and I heard some of the first iterations of classical music. And on Sundays, I grew up Lutheran, and so I heard a lot of Baroque music. And together, that was playing in my consciousness. So when one day my elementary school took us to hear the Greenville Symphony, my hometown orchestra, they were playing the piece by Rimsky-Korsakov, Scheherazade, with these great violin solos. And we were in a balcony, and I just remember hanging on the balcony, hanging on this violin sound, this every note. And I was transfixed. I'm not totally sure how much time transpired, but shortly after that, a string quartet came to my elementary school, and that's it. That's it. I just said, that's what I want to do. And I think I knew from the very day I started playing that I wanted to do it professionally, but I didn't know what that meant. I was the child of two professional parents, but none of them musical. My mom had two careers by the time I was growing up. She had started her career as a psychologist, and at the time I was growing up in South Carolina, she was an engineer for IBM. My stepdad was a dentist. So I brought music into our family, and we literally learned together what that meant and what development was all about. I didn't have private lessons when I started. I started in a strings class. In that strings class, we had to be taken out of the regular elementary school class. And so the elementary school teachers hated it. They hated the strings class. It would be time, and we would tell them it was time, and they're like, "Oh, strings again, go on." And that was kind of the environment that I started in. But I didn't care. I loved it so much. None of that bothered me. There were kids who thought it wasn't cool to play the violin. They wanted to beat me up because I chose to play the violin. I didn't care about that. I just loved it so much. That's really all that mattered. That's all that I could care, all that I cared about. I When I was first starting the violin, I didn't really know how to practice. I didn't totally have a sense of what that was, what that meant. What I did was to play for the love of playing. And all I wanted to do, for whether it was my tiny little tune from the method book, we used Mueller Rush, this Mueller Rush method book. All I wanted to do was to play the music the way I thought it should be heard. That's all. That's it. That was the carrot at the end of my stick that kept me chasing it and still does. All I ever wanted to do was to be able to play the music the way I want to hear it. But I think I went on for maybe 4 or 5 years before I had any private lessons. And somewhere along the way, somebody said, you should audition for the youth orchestra, the Carolina Youth Symphony. And I did that. And the conductor said, well, yeah, we definitely want you in our orchestra. You should have private lessons. And here's someone over here that we recommend. So that's when I officially started my private lessons, when I was actually 12 or 13. So by the time I auditioned for college, I had only been taking private lessons for about 5 years. But still, back in grade school, um, I became part of a pre-college program, and I ramped up pretty quickly in my development, and I learned a little more directly how to practice, and I played a lot of repertoire, and I'm a very methodical person. I'm a very detail-oriented person, so I think to the best of my ability and my skills at those levels, I applied my natural tendencies to, which is to search out details and to just get the music to where I want to hear it. And I had a wonderful teacher by that point in the pre-college program, and she said to me one day, you're one of the best violinists in your age group. You should be going to a summer festival, something like Tanglewood. And she put this brochure in my hands, and I was embarrassed to take it to my mom, honestly. I was so embarrassed because it looked great, but it looked expensive to me. And I didn't that was not I didn't have a frame of reference for that yet. Um, so I took it to my mom, and she immediately saw the value, and she immediately agreed, with my teacher that this is something that I needed to do. And, she shelled out the money for this, for this, what turned out to be one of the most incredible experiences of my life. I think that if you're lucky, there are things that hit you at the right time and in the right way at the right stage of development, and particularly maybe when you're a teenager, and they just inspire you with just the right, just the right things, the right elements. And that's what Tanglewood was for me. To be able to play with other top players of my age bracket from around the country, to be able to play this incredible repertoire, the Debussy La Mer and Brahms Symphony Number 3, and Strauss Ein Heldenleben. And then one week at the festival, people were buzzing, and they said, oh my gosh, we're playing Rite of Spring, we're playing Rite of Spring. And I said, oh, we're playing Rite of Spring, we're playing Rite of Spring. What is that? and that and that was my dive into this just new level of expressing my love for music and exploring the musical repertoire over hundreds of years. And I was so transfixed by that, I went back the next summer. And I think that was one of the pivotal, and not only was it musically great, and playing on the grounds of Tanglewood, and passing by the likes of Yo-Yo Ma and Seiji Ozawa and people like that walking across the lawn or having a hamburger right across from me in the dining hall. Those were really transformative experiences. And yeah, so I went back the next year. I also had the great fortune of going back at home. I think Tanglewood changed my trajectory. And it changed my mind forever. I already knew what I was going to do, but it made me very, very laser focused on where I wanted to do it. And I knew it was going to be in the Northeast. I knew it was going to be in New York or one of the major cities. And I kind of was born a New Yorker. I just was born in the South. I had a sense of that early on. And so I think the Tanglewood was a major turning point in a trajectory that I already knew quite well. But I also was very lucky right at home to have the opportunity to go to a wonderful arts magnet school. And I just loved that place. It was at the time one of the few in the country. I think, I don't know if it's accurate, but we were told at the time that it was one of four magnet schools in the country, arts magnet schools. And so I actually went to two schools. I went to my regular high school for my academic classes, and every afternoon I learned to drive because of the Fine Arts Center. I drove across town to the Fine Arts Center, and and I took these wonderful college level courses. We had chamber music coaching every day. We had music theory every day. We had AP music history every day. And so I learned in high school 1,000 years of music history before I even got to Eastman, where we then studied more meticulously 1,000 years of music history. And it was just such a wonderful place. I love interdisciplinary projects and interdisciplinary collaboration. And that was one of the places in my life that kind of got those juices flowing because we every year we would collaborate with the dance department or maybe the theater department, and then right across the way they're making jewelry, and right across the way they're doing paintings. And I really loved the Fine Arts Center, and it's another I'm so lucky to have had that in my development. So even, I guess what I want to say is that even though I started late and I thought there was maybe only one way to do something, we hear a lot of stories about people playing the violin from when they're 3 years old. That's not my story. You know, when I have media interviews, they want to find a picture of me as a small child. But when you're 9 years old, you're practically in your adult body. So there are no pictures of me, as a really, really tiny child. And it took me years to reconcile with that. But I think that, well, I'll tell you, to skip ahead quite a few years, I was featured in an interview on MSNBC with the great ballet dancer Misty Copeland. And if I remember correctly, she started at 14. So that officially shut down and was dancing professionally a few years later. That shut down any sense of doubt that I ever allowed myself to have again about my path. And one thing that I would impart to you, students and parents, is just to know that there is no one path. There's no one right way. There's no one way. And personally for me, I was so taken with the music that it was such and remains such a powerful element in my life and in what draws me, what calls me, that I think that it was the most potent way for me to be doing what I'm doing. I think far more so than to have had a parent that said, you should really do this. I started of my own desire to play and continue to be called by that every day. And I think it's really powerful. So skipping ahead, I knew I was going to be a professional violinist since I was 9 years old. I knew I was going to a conservatory, but I cast a really wide net. I wasn't exactly sure what kind of education I wanted to get. And I know my mom was so romanced when she saw the letters from Brown University, and she so wanted me to go to Brown. She's like, "But Brown," and I said, "But I want to really go to a conservatory to be able to do what I want to do performance wise in the best way that I think it's, that I know how to do that." But I wasn't totally sure. So I cast a wide net. I auditioned to 9 schools. And my mom, once again, supporting me in every possible way, she took me to every single one of those places. From Indiana University to Oberlin to Curtis to New York for Juilliard. Like, she took me to all of those places, and I really got a chance to to dip my toe in the water, to see them in real time, and to decide for myself where I would go. And it's also kind of funny that my teachers, I had competing teachers in a sense. I had my violin teacher in the pre-college program. I saw her every week. She wanted me to go to Oberlin. But my chamber music teacher, who I saw every day, was a graduate of Eastman. I think the his influence perhaps won over. But I was really enticed by Eastman because I knew I wanted to have a rigorous academic education. I didn't want to lose sight of my academic self. I have a curious mind. I love to know things. I love to study things. I wanted to be in a place where I thought that would honor that and not just have me be a violin jock. And so for me, that was the Eastman School of Music, and I feel really good about that to this day. I feel like it was just such a solid education. It's the one that allows me to speak so passionately and comfortably about music as a concert speaker. It's what gives me the tools to even to know where to delve further into the music that I love so much, to understand why what makes it tick. I am really excited about that as my foundational education. And then I knew, as I mentioned, I'm a New Yorker. I just was born in the South. So I knew I was going to end up in New York City. And I was accepted both at Juilliard and Manhattan School of Music. And I was intending to study with at Eastman. I had the great honor of studying with the great violin pedagogue Charles Castleman. And when I went to the Manhattan School of Music, or when I went to New York, I knew that I wanted to study with Glenn Dicterow, the concertmaster of the New York Philharmonic. And I had the opportunity to do that both at Juilliard and at Manhattan School of Music. Manhattan School of Music gave me a full scholarship, and also was had the availability of Glenn Dicterow's studio and right away, whereas Juilliard I would have had to wait a year. So I went to the Manhattan School of Music, and I didn't necessarily intend to focus myself on orchestral playing, but I studied with Glenn through that scholarship in the orchestral master's program. And I could have gone in many directions at that time, but some things started to coalesce really strongly for me. I was runner up at the New York Philharmonic auditions when I was still in school. And so I started subbing there. That was effectively my first job, playing in the New York Philharmonic when I was 22. And I and a lot of other people assumed that I would eventually get that job and that would be my career. Um, that didn't happen. I had some great auditions there, and I had at least one dud, but that didn't happen. I did, however, win a series of other auditions, and I had an orchestral career across different settings. I lived in Spain for a year, playing in an orchestra there, and I won an audition for another major orchestra, which unfortunately, in the realm of the things in life that happen and disappointment, I won the audition for a major orchestra behind a screen in 3 rounds. And yet, after that audition process, the orchestra decided they were not interested in hiring me. And they went on to hire somebody who scored less on the objective numbering system. And these things do happen. And I was devastated. And to come back from a disappointment like that after spending your whole postgraduate education working towards an orchestral job, it was devastating. But I decided, obviously picked myself up and went to the next audition, which I won, which allowed me to stay in my beloved New York City. I played with the New Jersey Symphony for 12 years and was a member for 14 years. But as I was there, I discovered myself more as a creator. I don't like to just show up and play concerts. I like to create things. I like to create the reason the concert happens. I like to put the ideas that I have about the music and the history of the music together and to create things. One of the things that I did while I was actually at the New Jersey Symphony was I was awarded a grant from the Mellon Foundation through the orchestra to pursue a goal that I had at that time, which was to study in Berlin with concertmasters of the Berlin Philharmonic and to go to every concert that Berlin Philharmonic played for 2 weeks. So that was a project that I created at that time. And I remember when somebody from Symphony Magazine came to interview some of us in the orchestra for a different project, a different reason. And I mentioned that the guy said, "Oh, that was you? Wow." Like I heard about that project. I didn't realize that was you. So even then, I was doing what I could to create things. But I think one of the most powerful vehicles for me in my career has been my recordings. I think I learned early on that I think there used to be a bigger emphasis on the idea of a debut recital. And the tricky thing about this debut recital is that, not only do you have to find a great venue, but then you have to have all the people there that you want to hear you in order for that to have an impactful change on your career. And I think I decided early on that I wanted to create a historical record that was more lasting than that I could then send to whoever I want and not necessarily wait for them to come to an event on one day. So I started recording CDs and I wasn't even sure what value they would have in the world. I call my debut CD a test balloon, and I sent it up and wonderful things started to happen. I was invited by the Dallas Symphony to be guest soloist based on that CD. And shortly after the CD, I was a prize winner, not the prize, a prize winner of the Naumburg International Violin Competition. And that was I was never a big competition person, but I wanted to do something big like that before aging out of those sorts of things. And I was really excited that the one time out that I did that, I was an honorarium prize winner. I was one of they were it was such a high level year that they awarded honorarium prizes to 9 of us, and I was the only one that was not a student of Robert Mann. So I think this is kind of interesting factoid. I think I went on from there to get a little more serious about my voice in the world and what I felt that I could do. Um, I think speaking of voices, literally, I discovered myself as a public speaker at the New Jersey Symphony. I was first asked to do something small, like a subscription renewal speech from the stage, and I was terrified. I was like, "Oh, no, 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 no! I don't want to do anything like that." And then, I think they asked me a few times, and I said, "No, no, no, no." And and then one day they said, "Well, we're playing this Mendelssohn Reformation Symphony, and you're Lutheran. Would you mind if we interview you from the stage?" I said, "Oh, sure." And suddenly I realized, oh, I see. Talking about something that you're passionate about or that you're close to, that's easy. And not too long after that, I became the official concert speaker of the New Jersey Symphony, the unofficial official. I had 5 minutes at the top of every concert to talk about, again, drawing from this wonderful education that I'd had from Eastman, to talk about the program. And one of my favorite two speeches was talking about the great Mahler Resurrection Symphony No. 2. And I also was able to introduce their French festival on another occasion. But going back to my voice, my playing voice, I started to get more serious about um, my voice in the world, not necessarily cloaked by an institution. I was sort of wanting to express my own ideas in a setting that I could control that. And so I think the next test balloon that I went in the direction of was my CD called In My Own Voice. And it was really my more affirmative statement of who I am and what I think I can contribute to the field artistically. And it's a disc with 7 pieces. And I remember how difficult it was shopping to labels. They were like, "Well, we like the playing, but you've got 7 composers on there. We really just want one." And I said, "Well, I don't really want to I don't want to record a single composer disc." They're like, "Well, we don't really do recital discs." The next label says, "Well, we really wouldn't know where to file it. Would we file it under E for, a Y for Izai, or B for Bach. We just don't know. And I thought, okay. And but then I got a call that also was a really wonderful affirmation for me at the time. I got a call from EMI, who I'd submitted the disc to, and they said, "We love this disc. We would produce it. Um, but I've been in the company for 25 years, and I'm losing my job in 2 weeks, and this whole division is dissolving. But we just wanted to call you and tell you how much we love this disc." And that, to this day, means the world to me. And that disc, in my own voice, is actually now featured in the Smithsonian Museum of African American History. I don't know how that happened. The curator, no one ever called me, but one day I had some friends who were visiting the museum when it first opened, and they posted on Facebook, "Look what we found," and I was just as shocked as they were. So I think sometimes the lesson there for the students and the parents too is there are disappointments, and you sometimes have to hear no's. But the vision that you have in your mind is so important, and not everybody's going to get it right away. Sometimes people may never get it, but you have to be strong enough in your own vision of something to carry through and persevere some of those no's, because there can be a lot of them. I'd say the next recording project that I would tell you about is my imagination my imagination project. Now, talk about persevering through no's. I decided I wanted to do something really eclectic. Since, as I mentioned to you, EMI and many other labels were closing, the younger people on the call are not even going to think about the fact that there were stores that sold discs, and you would go in them and you would buy them. And but the stores that do that all went out of business, and we moved everything online, and so a lot of the labels were having difficulty, and the whole field was in disarray, kind of still is. So at that time, I decided I wanted to do something different. I didn't want to create another CD for the trash bin. I wanted to do something a little off the wall. So I decided, now it's hard to imagine it as new, because especially in the pandemic era, we've done so much video. But at the time, in 2013, I decided I wanted to do classical music videos. It was unheard of. Nobody really did that, and nobody took it seriously. I decided I wanted to do something artistic, that would show a big fancy classical solo violin piece, but also something a little whimsical and fun to show that violinists are not all serious. And I thought I probably need help telling this story. So I went and tried to find a publicist to work with me. I interviewed 20 publicists, PR agents. 19 of them turned me down, and they said things like, "Well, videos? No, we don't. No, we don't do videos. We do real recordings. We do, YouTube? No, we don't do YouTube. We do real recordings." But there was one who did work with me, and through that relationship, and just through the project that I wanted to envision and realize, I was able to get over 1 million views on that project, the Imagination Project. About 500,000 views on my Izai Solo Sonata number 2, no, number 6, and another 500,000 views on my crazy, whimsical arrangement of one of my favorite songs, Pure Imagination, from the movie Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. So if Michael, if you will, I just want to share with you about a minute or so of my Izai video, and similarly a couple minutes of the Pure Imagination. These could not be more different.
Do you want me to start with Pure Imagination or Izai?
No, start with Izai.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, for contrast. And so I can tell you a little bit about that. How many of you know the composer Izai, Eugene Izai? He's one of our virtuoso violin composers. You don't know him from many other genres of music, because he mostly wrote violin music and string music. But he wrote these fabulous set of pieces called, the solo violin sonatas. And I think he wrote them in a few days, but it takes us more than a few days to work them up. And I actually literally learned the piece for this video. Whenever you'd like.
Was that your signal to move on to
Oh
the?
yeah, I mean, there are several places because otherwise it can just go all the way to the end. It's no great place to stop. And
Okay.
then for something completely different, again, I wanted something a little silly, little whimsical, and fun. So keep that in mind.
Okay.
This is my arrangement, by the way. Also, maybe 2 minutes solo.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. And
Gotta
back
go.
to the spoon. So yeah, as you can see, something totally different. And that project really got a lot of an interesting attention around the world. A lot of views and unexpected places, Brazil and Japan and South America in general. Yeah, so I want to tell you just a little bit about my time on Broadway. I was totally not expecting that avenue of my career to occur, but through this solo project that you just heard, somebody who coordinates for Broadway saw me play as concertmaster of an orchestra in Carnegie Hall, the New York Pops, and also saw this project and asked me if I would be the fiddler for Fiddler on the Roof. I had never played on Broadway and I wasn't really sure that it was something that I wanted to do, the idea of playing the same music night after night after night. But I decided to say yes. I thought it would be a very unique life experience, and I didn't know the half of it. It was one of the greatest personal and professional experiences of my life. They wrote solos for me that don't normally exist in the Broadway score, and they had me. I was not visible to the audience, but I was on a little bit of a pedestal in the pit so that I could interact with the actors on stage, and interact I did, and it was just an incredibly moving and powerful experience to tell that story every night and to have such tremendous responsibility in some of the solos that I had to render in the most tragic and beautiful moments in that story, and to work off of the actors that I respect so much, Danny Burstein as Artevia and um, Jessica Hecht as Golda. Again, it just was one of the greatest personal and professional experiences of my life. And although I wasn't seen, my playing got me seen. Some of the most significant press I've ever had in my career came from those days of being on Broadway, where I was heard and then seen. Featured on A Nice Story by NBC News and whatnot. So from that experience, it was such an incredible experience for me. I decided to go further. Some people would go in the direction after playing a piece of music nearly 500 times, they would probably be glad to be done with it, but not me. I decided I wanted to live even more with this music. So I created the first ever fiddler solo album. And I created that with our creative team, the arranger, Iran Eldor, and also our arranger, orchestrator, Ted Sperling. And I now tour that material all over, and I've played it in such diverse places as at the U.S. Supreme Court, and at just most recently, I played it at the as presented by the International Violin Competition of Indianapolis, and everything in between. I also created music videos of that project, so I'd like to share with you just a bit of my Fiddler Rhapsody.
Was that
As I said, we can end there. After that, you'll hear Sunrise, Sunset, and To Life in this medley of this short piece. I've played that with orchestra. I love that I am known as a player who can play Beethoven violin concerto in the first half and fiddler stuff on the second half. So I've made quite a lot of mileage out of that music. And I forgot to mention the larger span of places that I've played that. Considering what's happening in the world right now, I just wanted to let you know that I was a featured artist on the Fiddler documentary, The 55-Year History of Fiddler on the Roof, the original documentary, not the one on PBS, which cuts my scenes out, actually. But to film that documentary, we actually went to Kiev, Ukraine, and I was able to play my full fiddler program at the Sholem Aleichem Museum in Kiev. And that was an incredible experience. And having met so many incredibly wonderful people who welcomed me there, I feel even more touched by the violence that's being perpetrated against them. I remember I'm a linguist. I speak several languages and I speak a little bit of Russian. And it would have been much easier for me to try to dig my Russian back up as I was preparing to go on that trip. But I found out I was going there 2.5 weeks before, and I used those 2.5 weeks to cram learning for the first time ever the Ukrainian language. And because I wanted to give that level of respect to the people there once we arrived. And I'm really glad I did that. One person said to me, "Oh, you wasted your time. Everybody here speaks Russian." But somebody else overhearing that said, "You didn't waste your time. We really appreciate so much that you took the time to learn our language." So anyway, I just wanted to get that in there. I want to leave performance projects and recordings just to tell you about something else that I founded early in my career before anything was so set for me. I founded in 2005 an organization to bring my top colleagues in concert in homeless shelters and soup kitchens. That organization is called Music Kitchen Food for the Soul, and it was the pioneer organization to bring classical music to those experiencing homelessness. I am really, again, that's one of the one of the greatest personal and professional experiences of my life to be able to do that. Since 2005, we've presented over 100 concerts, over 200 top artists, and reached an estimated 30,000 shelter clients. And as we were approaching the 15th anniversary, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do to honor that work, but then I realized something very special that I could do and also historic. We've been receiving comments from the listeners that I solicited from day one on colored note cards, just very informally. And I've always treasured those cards, even when we had major press interviews and journalists said, "Oh, can I borrow those?" I said, "No, I'll photograph them for you," because that's just how much I revere how much life experience, like an archival wailing wall of sorts in those cards. So as we were approaching the anniversary, I decided to do something really groundbreaking, and that is to take those cards and invite 15 award-winning composers to set that to music in a song cycle called Forgotten Voices. And we want to go further still in what's in the groundbreaking aspect of the project, and that is to premiere the songs for the shelter clients first. So starting in 2019, I assembled a group of very fine artists, and we went into the homeless shelters and we premiered one song every month for 15 months. Well, 14 months. We ran right into the pandemic and we premiered the 15th one virtually. But I'm very excited that just a couple of months into that process and into that project, I spoke with Carnegie Hall because I wanted to have a really, very special place to do the world premiere of the full song cycle. And imagine how thrilled I was when they said, "We love this project and we would love to co-present with you the world premiere of Forgotten Voices." So like everybody else, we had a lot of things postponed, including that in 2020, but I'm so excited to let you know that our world premiere of Forgotten Voices is back on the calendar and it's happening March 31st. So I would love for you to be able to be there with us to experience that. I think it's a historic project and an evening, and it represents, I think, some really great compositions, and it represents a diversity of voices, because homelessness does not know any gender, it does not know any race, it does not know any age category. It is something that could happen to anyone. So I'm really very excited about that project. I'm very proud of that project, and the artists involved are just tremendous. And I could not have done it without each one of them. 15 composers and 10 artists, four singers and 6 string players. So yes, there are only 7 tickets left. There were 18 earlier today. Those 18 just got posted today. We're nearly sold out, but Carnegie Hall occasionally finds a few tickets in the couch cushions, things that they have to hold back for some contractual reasons. And as those dates for those contractual reasons come to the fore, they are able to release a few tickets. So there are a few left, and I hope you will be there to join us. But anyway, would anybody like to see the video for that, or shall we go right into, would you like to see the trailer about that project? I'm happy to show it if you want to see it. That way you'll have a better idea of what it's about, and you'll hear directly from the people that we serve. So
I never knew that classical music can be that touching, that real. I didn't realize that it was that powerful.
Music is adventure. Music is expression of our feelings,
I want to take the voices of marginalized people and cause paradigm shifts in how people think.
It felt like a warm embrace. It really felt like the music engulfed me and held me tight. I didn't know music had that power.
If I was to tell my life story, it would probably be your music. Your music's kind of sad, but kind of happy in the same way.
I was drawn to these particular words because I felt like it was a prayer. This person who wrote it was very grateful for being alive despite all the hardships.
These are the people that bring my music to life.
It's always a special occasion when a piece is performed and listened to for the first time.
This project was very special to me. It kind of helped me to reach back and to really remember that the music is much larger than me.
I was like, we got violinists playing. I was like, these aren't just regular violinists. They're like the Supremes.
It celebrates and uplifts often overlooked voices that we need to hear from, voices that share stories of struggle, hope, and humanity.
How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Have a passionate belief about something and pursue it and never let it go. Okay, with that, I will be so happy to answer your questions about anything we talked about or any questions you have.
Oh, I'll remind everybody you can put your questions in the chat, or you can just raise your hand, or you can unmute yourself. But I know Dorothy and I want to express our gratitude before that. Dorothy, you want to say a few words before we do the questions? I'll give you the honor. Oops, you're muted. You're muted. There we go.
Yeah, I feel so moved, and it was just a wonderful experience to listen to you speak about your life and the important things that you are doing and how you've evolved from being that 9-year-old who discovered music. I mean, it's a wonderful, wonderful story. And one of the things that I find so inspiring is that it's never too late. You can always come to music and be moved by music and learn music. And actually, one of my very first teaching experiences was at the New York Association for the Blind. And I had a student who was 79 years old and had always wanted to play the violin. And we started violin lessons at 79. And she was incredible. It was a wonderful experience. And she had no sight at all. And when she heard that I was getting married, she made a tray for me, and I don't even know how she made that tray with beautiful little ceramic pieces, and I treasure that forever. And that's a long time ago now, more than 50 years. So that was my beginning for teaching. So
When I was 9, shortly after playing, when I was 9, it felt like 79 based on how people used to think of it, but really it's not, it's not a big deal starting at 9. Yes, yes.
Joan, would you?
Yeah.
And Angelique, yeah.
I'm the former director of the Belleville Public Library, and you used to come to the library and the high school with the outreach program from New Jersey Symphony.
Yes, I remember that.
It was wonderful. It was really wonderful. But I wanted to ask you, where do you think you got your musical talent from in the family?
Well, my mom is so incredibly intelligent and so incredibly talented in every possible way. She played the clarinet in high school, but it was never anything serious for her. But occasionally, when I play things for my grandmother and I hear her kind of just lightly humming in the background, I was like, oh, she's not a singer and she won't do anything overt, but I've just recently started to wonder if my grandmother might be the source of this. She's never done anything overtly musical, but every once in a while, if you're paying attention, you might hear her hum to herself. Or when I played for her one of the Forgotten Voices songs when it was just in an MP3 form, because I was so excited about each of the songs as they came into existence. And I played for her the MP3 of Paul Moravec's song, Music is Love. And I heard her just lightly singing along with this song she was hearing for the first time. So I don't know. I'm not sure, but possibly my grandmother.
Angelique?
Hi, Kelly. That was just really, really lovely. Just very inspirational listening to you speak, and specifically about your experience, auditioning behind the screen, and then, where it's supposed to be just, blind, right? So I'm old enough to remember when the Hit Factory closed and saw a lot of what was happening at the beginning when the digital platforms were taking over music. But I just wanted to talk to you a little bit just from the vantage point as a person of color, as a woman of color, where you see opportunities for people like yourself and like my son, who's somewhere down here on the Zoom, to continue to play and share their love of classical music. I mean, you were playing Fiddler on the Roof, and there's a really, I have to tell this funny story. Dorothy, just indulge me. So Dorothy, we do everything that Dorothy says, my family, because she is family. She's our grandmother, and she's a grand lady. So Dorothy, I don't know if you know this story, but the Turnhour School has a fantastic musical program, but there's also as part of the JCC itself a theater program, and they were going to put on Fiddler on the Roof, but they didn't have a fiddler. But they had the actors and the players, but not the fiddler. So Dorothy recommended Quincy. Quincy, you have to wave here and say hi. This was their Fiddler on the Roof. Do you see Quincy, are you there?
All
He's
right.
he's gonna come down and say hi. But let me just tell you why this is important, and this goes back to this people of color. So while Quincy was doing his Fiddler on the Roof, somebody in the audience saw Quincy and approached me afterwards and spoke to me about SPA, which is the Sphinx Performance Academy. And that has turned out to be a really wonderful experience for him to really meet other great artists of all backgrounds and all colors. So I just wanted to just say, you know, from one experience, you talked about Tanglewood, how it is just really manifested in such a great career. And do you see more opportunities to play and to perform and maybe to be accepted as an artist in your own right for people of color, for women of color in the future?
I'm going to say something that's going to be complex, because I am well read, and I'm very observant, and I understand the world, and I understand history. We have so many challenges that we face, as regards people of color, and the way the world responds to us. That's a fact, and that's real. However, I own this music. It's mine. I've never had any doubt about that. And I don't ask permission to play it. And I don't ask permission to be, I'm always grateful for people who choose me. And as any human being would be, you know, we put ourselves out there in a quite vulnerable way, and hope to be accepted. And I'm always grateful when people say yes to what I want to do. But I'm never one who feels like I can only do something if somebody grants access to me as a Black woman. I'm going to I will go over, under, and through to do what I feel like I'm here in this world to do. And I didn't really need. I think people ask me, oh, but you didn't have any role models. Like, yes, I did. My role models were Itzhak Perlman, Isaac Stern, Yo-Yo Ma, and Wynton Marsalis. I had an album of all four of them, and Cho Lang-Lin. Those were my role models. What do you mean I didn't have any role models? My mom was my role model. You know, she's sort of the role model of all things. And I applied the excellence of everything that she does. I applied that to music, which is my passion. But I didn't need to see somebody who looked like me to feel that I had permission to do what I do. I do what I do. I understand the world, and I understand the context, and I see so much opposition that we face. And honestly speaking, I get so discouraged when I'm doing a project such as all of the projects that I've told you about tonight, and I get interviewed, and people say, "What's it like to be a Black violinist?" And then I'm like, I'm a violinist. If you see me as just, as you have to sort of qualify that. That's not really how I came to this conversation. I came to this conversation to share with you XYZ project. And yet at the same time, I'm proud to be an ambassador. We are part of this music. People of African descent are part of this music since the creation of it for hundreds of years. And so this is not new in the era that we live in. We are part of a long history. We are part of a long trajectory. I'm very proud of that. And yet I am part of the entirety of it. I'm not an exception to it, not an asterisk or a sub parenthetical phrase. And I don't think any artist of color should think of themselves that way. I think that you should, the young people on the call, you should draw your role models from wherever you are inspired, period. And yes, there are sometimes, I have to say, when President Obama got elected, I thought, wow, that gave me that extra boost. And who knows how I would have felt if I were 9 years old when that happened. But I generally feel that I was raised to feel that I can do anything. And I will go over and under and through to do what I feel called to do creatively. And yeah, there are a lot of frustrations, and there are a lot of places where the world tries to say no. But for all sorts of reasons that the world carries its limitations. but I try as best I can to see that and move over, under, and through. Even as I get so frustrated by things I see in the world, and I know the reality and I know history, I don't let that define who I am. I will go over, under, and through. I feel like my creative calling in this world, for music, is so far beyond me, that I work really hard to, like this Music Kitchen project. The human being, I get tired, I get frustrated, I get, discouraged. It's so much fundraising. It's so many no's and closed doors when I'm trying to do something, but I feel called by something beyond myself. And I constantly work with that, I think. So that's a kind of a big and complex answer to your question, but I hope that it makes sense what I'm saying.
And I'm just waiting any time now for my child to say that I'm his hero. It should be coming any minute now.
It will come. If not now, it'll come later. It'll come later. He'll get there.
I gotta know.
Kelly, Wayne has his.
Wayne, you have a question? Yeah.
Yeah, Kelly, it's just so great to hear you say that, because you learn through the years that there's always somebody who's going to criticize you. There's always somebody who's going to be like, "Wait, you're playing fiddler? Like, what are you doing?" But you have to just be happy with what you do and how you're presenting it. And if you love it and you're happy with it and you're not offending anybody, there's always going to be a critic. And if you try to appease the critic, then there's going to be somebody who doesn't like you because you're appeasing it. There's, the critic. There's always going to be someone and so you just have to be happy with what you're doing and what you're presenting. And it's a beautiful thing. You can't get angry. There's no time for anger. There's no time for looking at someone and going, "What? You don't like what I'm," no, it's what it is. So I was just glad to hear you say what you just said.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Thank you.
Yeah. Kelly, I'm wondering if there are any questions from students who are up.
Yes.
8 o'clock. We have Quincy, Charlotte, Sophia, maybe some others. Do any of you have questions? Charlotte, looks like you're showing us. Is that a heart there, Charlotte? I don't see. Do you want to show us?
There's a heart with a picture in the middle.
It's hard to see. You're a little bit in the dark there, Charlotte. But that's nice. Do you have a question by chance, Charlotte? No? Oh, there it is.
There you are. You're in the light. Oh, it's your picture. Yes, sure.
Quincy,
Sophia, that's fine.
Yeah, Quincy or Sophia, questions?
Struggle to execute a smooth glissando towards a key melodic note. Do you have any suggestions to improve on this area? Glissando. So I think there are different kinds of glissandos, and I'm as somebody who likes a lot of languages. Sometimes people ask me, did the language come first or the music come first? I'm not totally sure, but I know that they're very interconnected, and there's a language to glissandos, and the ones that you might use for Mozart, the very tiny ones, are not the same ones you would use. For example, I just played the Wynton Marsalis violin concerto, and I understand he's a very big partner of the Turnhour School. That is an enormous Mahler-sized piece with a Mahler-sized orchestra and so many different styles of music that he goes through. And there are different kinds of glissandos, not one size fits all. So I think it depends on what kind of what effect you want to have. For one thing, there are two different kinds where you go over the string, where you glissando on the note prior to the note that you're going to land on, and you just kind of pop the note down that you actually land on. And then there are other glissandos where you go straight through with the same finger. And those are the ones that are closer to our time. Of course, within that. Raised hand. Oh, Charlotte raised hand. Yes. Okay, well, we will get to, I think I'm still on Sophia's question. Okay. So I would say that if you're practicing the kind of glissando that starts on the previous note and ends, like if you're on a first finger and you end on a third finger, then I would practice the glissando on the actual finger that it happens, and then you put the other finger down. But if you're doing a glissando on that finger, I would say practice the glissando as a shift, as a slow shift, where your hand gets to know this note, and this note and the distance in between. You're basically teaching your hand the distance between the two notes. And then you can play with it a little bit. Then you can make it slower or maybe faster and do all kinds of fun things with it. Does that help a little bit, Sophia?
I think
Where did you go?
Charlotte, you have your hand raised. Could you unmute yourself, Charlotte, please? There we go.
Chinese.
你好吗? No, 谢谢. That's all. Not very much.
You speak Chinese.
Just those few things. I know. 你好吗 and 谢谢.
That's a good question, Charlotte. And Eva Holzer wrote how nice it is that you make time to play for homeless people. That is very, very special. She put that in the chat in case you hadn't seen that.
Oh, I haven't seen that. Yeah. Well, it's a really wonderful thing because there's no what we call prerequisite. That's a big word for the students. There's no prerequisite, meaning there's not a special circumstance for homeless people. So many people can become homeless from different kinds of life experience. So some of them have never, ever heard a live note of music ever in their lives. Some of them are former Carnegie Hall donors and everything in between. And so when we reach people and sometimes the most difficult moments in their life, they're even more receptive and appreciative to the power of great music played in an expressive and communicative way. So a lot of the artists that I bring to Music Kitchen and to the shelters really, really love playing there because it's an experience that's totally different than playing in a concert hall. In some ways, many of the artists find it even more meaningful and fulfilling than playing for concerts in a concert hall. So yeah, I think it's important to remember there's so many things we take for granted. Like I started Music Kitchen after I played a run through. I was just looking for a place to do a run through of my concerto before leaving for a concerto. And because my friends weren't available, I said, "Oh, I'll just go play for the men at the shelter," because I was a volunteer cook and I knew they would be there. And I was feeling guilty. I thought, who wants to hear a violin concerto with no accompaniment? But a professional musician. I was like, oh my gosh, what am I subjecting these people to? But when I got there playing a violin concerto with no accompaniment, they loved it. And they were so moved and they were soothed and they were excited and so many things that they asked me if I would come back the next night and play. And I said, I could do that, but my concert is happening in just a couple of days, so I'm going to play the same music. They said, we don't care. We want to hear it again. And so through that, and I came back and I played for them. And through that experience, I realized that the little things that we might take for granted about the ability to make music can really transform someone's experience. It can transform someone's life. So I think we should not underestimate our role in the world. Yet we don't make bricks and we don't cure cancer. Well, I don't know, we might have a role in that. We don't have a role in making bricks though. But it's such a powerful it's such powerful work that we do. And I think it's so appropriate that we bring so much of ourselves and so much of our lives to honing it, perfecting it, and making it as powerful as we can.
Kelly, you may have seen this in the chat that Charlotte wrote. I played Sunrise Sunset in group class.
Oh, very nice. Very nice, Charlotte.
Is that Charlotte who wrote that? Did you play Sunrise Sunset, Charlotte?
Quincy also did.
Oh, Quincy did too?
You know what? Yeah. I think after playing for on Broadway, I realized something. I am the only person probably in the entire United States that was not Tevye in high school. Because everybody else was. No, I grew up playing the one opening solo. Bum, ba, da, bum, bum, ba. I played as concert master of my youth orchestra. I did first encounter that music.
Our violin groups are playing it at our Gift of Music this year. So we're looking forward to that.
Great. Very nice.
Wolfie, is there a question from you there? I see you have Neves with you. Is there a question? You can unmute if you want to.
Hi, Wolfie.
Do you want to? Do you have a
Maybe
question?
that's Mom's. Oh, I can't hear you.
We're not hearing you well. Sorry.
Oh no.
You're not muted, so it's not that.
Yeah, that's strange.
You can
Maybe
put
you're
your
muted on your computer. Maybe your computer is on mute.
We need a teenager class. Well, we can come back to you if you have a question. Does anybody else have a question or comment? I see Charlotte has her hand up again. Is that another question, Charlotte? I'm not sure.
At a wedding.
I'm not sure if you saw.
Oh, you played at a wedding, Charlotte. Yeah, Charlotte.
Played at a wedding?
You played music at a wedding. That's right.
Very nice. Yeah, one of life's important moments.
Oh, and Quincy
is always present.
Quincy wrote a question. He wrote, "Do you have a recording of Izai Sonata Number 4?" So
I don't, but I recorded in my own voice CD. I recorded the Sonata Number 3. So I've recorded number 3 and number 6.
Quincy, did you have another question or anything else you want to say or ask?
I might need a moment to think on it, but I'm trying.
Okay. You want to tell
anything you want to know?
Tell
Ask
Kelly.
away.
Quincy plays violin and viola, which
Nice.
he's playing chamber music and an orchestra.
What do you like to play, Quincy? What repertoire?
I mean,
Other than
right
Sun by
now,
Sunset.
I mean, right now I'm just trying to learn the major repertoire on the viola and the violin, and then after that, I think I'm gonna go back. I mean, I definitely want to like play more Chrysler on the violin because those are great pieces, and then on viola, when I do finish learning pieces like Bartok and Walton, I think I want to go and play Brahms sonatas and then others like contemporary works for like the viola. There's plenty of those, and so many pieces that I probably have never heard of. So it might be interesting seeing that type of stuff.
Yeah, that's a great thing to discover pieces you haven't heard of yet. But I love Brahms so very much, and Bartok too. Actually, I love Bartok, and I love the Bartok Viola Concerto. That's such a great piece. Yeah.
And Quincy, you're playing Hindemith too now, right? Quincy, Hindemith Sonata.
Yeah, so I performed the first and second movements of it. Right now I'm working on the third and fourth as well.
Viola Sonata.
Yes, Opus 25.
And you're in a string quartet, right?
Yes.
He's doing quite a lot.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. Well, I see Charlotte, your hand is up. Is that a question, Charlotte, or no? Question. Okay. You know, I have a question, Kelly. You sort of hinted at it earlier, but in reading your bio, one of the many things I'm very impressed by is the number of languages that you speak. If I remember correctly, it was 7 or 8 or something like that. And I guess apart from the impressiveness of knowing so many languages, I'm wondering what connections can you share about learning languages and knowing languages and being a musician and learning pieces of music and communicating in different ways? And how does perhaps knowing a language from a country whose music you're playing, if that's the right word, how does knowing the language help you then play the music of that culture?
Well, I have to first say the disclaimer that I'm not fluent at all. I'd say that there's a descending order of proficiency, of fluency, and I would say French is the best fluency. And Russian being the bottom of the list appropriately this week. No, except that I love Prokofiev and Tchaikovsky just as much as everybody else. So I think that languages are another obsession and passion of mine. And I do think I didn't know myself to be a linguist. When I was in high school, I thought I was just Francophile. I started French relatively late. I started actually the first intro to language I had was in middle school. For some reason, they didn't give us a whole class. They gave us some kind of a 2-week intro to. And for some reason, I was so jaded at the time about French. I was like, oh, everybody learns French. I'm going to do Spanish. And I just love the idea of learning a language. I love that you start today with this word, and then then you learn these 5 words, and then you learn these 10 words, and then suddenly it's like handlebars on a thing. You can transport yourself using these pillars that you can hold on to, and you can say new things, and you can say things that you can't say. You can say things in one language that can't be said in another language when you really, I mean, of course I didn't learn that in middle school, but then, and that was a 2-week thing. And then French came around in high school in my sophomore year, and I just was obsessed. I remember my French teacher saying, not to me in particular, but to the class, you'll never really be able to speak French so that a French person doesn't know you're American. And I thought to myself when I was 15, I was like, no, 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 I don't accept that. I'm not going with that. I'm going with the other plan. And so I love when I go to Paris, people don't know I'm American. You can have a completely different experience that way. And regarding your question about the music connection, I think it's very interesting. I think that the construction, for example, of the German language being with the verb at the end. I don't know, for anybody who knows anything about German, you can't even find out what it is you're doing until the end of the sentence because of the way the construction is. Japanese is like that too. But in German, there are a lot of things that have to agree, the subject verb agreement and all of the various cases. And a remnant of that for us is like to whom. The reason we say to whom is because that's a case, and we add M in that case. I think dative case or something. But anyway, I find that if you look at the connections to, say, Beethoven and the strong iterations of cadences, and cadences are very strong, and the repetition of cadences, they're very final, they're very definitive. I think it goes very tracks very closely with the German language and how it works. And if you think about French, for example, a language where I remember in the beginning, one of the difficult things is to be able to, for your ear to distinguish one word from the next, because all of the words elide with each other. They're not as distinct from each other, bordered as German words are. French, the words connect so that you don't hear the connections. And to me, there's a direct correlation to Impressionist music and how one idea just smoothly transitions to the next, and there are not a lot of hard cadences, and there are not a lot of definitive endings. There are, but they're fewer and farther between, and they're more nuanced and more smooth and more. So I find that too. And then if you think about Spanish and Italian, which are related languages, and the way that they flow, and the rhythmic undulation and the flowing quality of them, but the articulated flowing quality of Spanish and Italian, they lend themselves to the way those languages are used in arias in like grand Italian opera. If you think about it, I mean, it's very interesting. I think language is so tied to how we see the world and how we experience music, and it's and actually one of my favorite composers, Hungarian composer Zoltán Kodály. I don't speak Hungarian, but I understand that the Hungarian language has lots of strong syllables at the front of the word, which is why we say Kodály and not Kodai. Kodály, Cigan, things like that. Kodály, Zoltán Kodály. If you think about the Ravel Cigan, he was a French composer, but he was imitating the Hungarian and Gypsy style, the Cigan. Da-da, da-da-dum, ba-dum. Similar, he's borrowing from that, the way language works. I think some things in Russian, probably similarly, let's see. Well, I think Rachmaninoff had a tendency to articulate his name at the end of cadences. Rachmaninoff, da-da-dum. And I think that's more of a, I don't know, that's probably a different technique that you would describe.
Yeah. Well, Kelly.
Anyway, so yeah, I think there are some strong connections to music and language.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to let Dorothy have the closing words, but I also personally want to thank you so much for sharing your story, your time, your expertise, your inspiration with us tonight. And we can't wait to see you in April for the masterclass. But let's have Dorothy say a few closing remarks. And I do want to draw everyone's attention in case you haven't noticed it. I put in the chat, actually more than once, the link to a PDF of videos that Kelly shared with us tonight, as well as some others. So if you want to take a moment to download it while you can from the chat, you also find quite a lot of information on Kelly's website, including, and you have the link to the concert on March 31st. Remember, there's only 7 tickets left. So if you're thinking at all of going, I wouldn't wait long. It's going to sell out. So Dorothy?
Well, it's just been an hour and a half of total inspiration and a great joy to spend this time with you. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time. And we can't wait till April 12th. So you will most likely get to see all of these people again, and hopefully it will be in person.
Yes, great. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure, and I'm so happy to know and to be part now of the Turnhour School family. And thank you for your interest in my work. Thank
Very
you, Dorothy
much
and
so.
Michael, for
Good
inviting me.
night. My pleasure. Good night, everybody. Good
Good
night,
night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.